The best place to get capital is from your customers. I always, when you hear like, oh, most businesses fail because they couldn't get access to financing, I'm like, no, most businesses fail because they didn't have enough revenues to cover their costs and turn a profit. That's the real reason. So you go get a loan. There's a Band-Aid. Sometimes it's not a Band-Aid. Sometimes it's an opportunity to expand.
So no, this is another episode of
Big Talk about small business.
And we've got a guest today.
We do. I'm excited to hear from our guest today.
Me too.
I mean, after, reading up about them quite a bit, I mean, I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of value that Levi is going to bring to us and our listeners, especially those small businesses and that newly formed founders that I'm sure Levi has had plenty of experiences in talking with and seeing some of the goods, the bads, the uglies, the pros, the cons on capital raising and other types of things. So
it's a big topic. We talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
Most of the time we talk about how we don't want to raise any capital if we can avoid it.
Yeah, that's the best path if you get enough profit from customers.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point, Levi. It's like it's always the best capital that you can raise is from your clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, truly is. I mean, that gives you the greatest value. You don't exchange equity. You have no debt. I mean, there's all kinds of great things.
And not to mention the fact that just being able to demonstrate that you can perform, you're going to get a better deal later from anybody who puts any money in. You're going to give less, right?
100%.
But anyway, it is a big deal for a lot of businesses. They say the number one reason for failure is inadequate capitalization. Tell us a little bit about yourself. This is Levi King, and he is in Las Vegas, baby.
Yep, moved here a little less than a year ago. Taxes just got too miserable in California. Otherwise, love the Bay Area and all of California. But yeah, I like to joke, I took the blue collar path to Silicon Valley. But when I was 21 or 22, I started an electric sign servicing company, bootstrapped my way into installation, then into manufacturing. Sold that company when I was 25, something like that. Had a couple million in revenues, and all of our customers were also small businesses. And custom manufacturing is a very difficult business, and so I've always viewed technology as a lot simpler. No inventory, no liability with the boom truck out on some job and somebody maybe being hungover that's on the job. And but that was the first of 5 small businesses I started in my 20s that were all Main Street companies, all successful. Sold them all. They were all in different industry verticals, which is not a normal small business path. Usually, if you start a manufacturing company and you sell it, you say, okay, what's another manufacturing company? But instead, I bought a hotel. So there was just very different things I did. And credit and financing was always very difficult to understand. And once I had it all figured out as a manufacturer, which is a low risk industry, that I bought a hotel and I'm in a high risk industry, I didn't even know what that meant. And so everything changes based on the industry you're in, your time of business, the geography, of course, all the data around you and your business. But then after that, I got into technology. So my first tech company is called Lendio, late stage profitable tech company that is a business loan platform where small business owners can apply once and get access to 100 different loans, over 100 different loans with 70 plus lenders. So it just kind of simplifies the process so your credit doesn't get banged up and stuff like that. And at Lendio, really solve that. What financing can I get today? That's the problem that gets solved. And I just had this desire, had been that small business owner, and I was inspired by Credit Karma, frankly, in the consumer space, to say, hey, there's got to be something like this for small business. And so once I felt like we were out of the woods at Lendio, I left and started Nav. Between the two companies, a couple $100 million of venture capital raised. At Nav, we're also late stage profitable. Got about 1 million users on the platform. Historically, we've had over 2.5 million across time. And we really educate you on your data. So these third parties that are going to make risk-based decisions on your business, like lenders, like your insurer, like your payments processor, like the trade credit ecosystem, which is much larger than the lending ecosystem, so you can understand what are the scores they're looking at, how are those scores constructed, what are the mistakes you're making, how can you make smarter decisions so that your scores and your overall credit financial health improves over time. So you can go from either you don't qualify for anything to you can get something subprime, or you can get something subprime, and now you can get into B paper or alt-A paper type financing, and eventually into traditional bank financing, SBA financing, which is kind of the holy grail, lowest cost, usually the friendliest terms, things like that. So that's in a nutshell the journey.
That's very interesting. Do you provide like individual counseling, or do you do this through information on your site and training available through the site itself?
We do have a coaching tier in our software subscription, but by and large, like there's no salespeople. People just find us online. They sign up. Our product's digital. Everything's dynamic because we built our software around a data layer. So whether you're a plumber with 3 years in business and your credit's banged up, or you're a bakery with 6 months in business and your credit's clean, the software wraps around the data, and all the insights that we drive are based on the data. So it just feels customized for, doesn't matter where you're at in your journey, because it wraps around that data layer and makes everything relevant from there. So it's a digital product. You got an app, you got the web app, you got a iOS, Android, the typical lineup of products.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I didn't put that together when we signed Levi up, but I have heard of the platform. Because I'm just like a lot of other small business owners. I got one that's always looking for money.
Yeah.
And but I never got on there because I knew we weren't credit worthy enough to get borrow any money. So we struck strictly with equity.
But to Levi's point though, his app is perfect to go in there and understand how you can improve your company's credit score. It's basically it's the same thing you would do with consumer based.
Yeah.
How do I improve my credit score? But it's all about business, right?
I love it.
Does it give you like guidance and not tricks, but tips and actions to go take care of, like to get a DNS number or whatever else, right? To improve it?
Yep. All that stuff. It's not just business credit, because sometimes it's how you're managing your cash flows that holds you back. If you bounce 2 or 3 checks a month, then you're not going to get any A paper type financing. So sometimes it's not the business credit holding you back. It oftentimes is. Sometimes it's the way you're managing your cash. Other times it's your personal credit. Your personal credit is still going to come into most financing situations for any favorable type of business credit card or loan. And so it's that comprehensive view of all the data that the third party is going to look at to say, are we going to do business with this small business? And if so, how are we going to price it?
We've got one business we're involved in that has $700,000 in debt, but there's no way the business would ever get that. I'm talking bank debt. But simply by guaranteeing it personally, they based it entirely on our personal financial statements.
Mm-hmm.
And the business stuff just basically went out the door. You see that often?
Yeah, there's a lot of BS online about what business credit could do for you. Like, have perfect business credit and you can get, $700,000 line of credit with no personal guarantee. It's BS. If you want access to cash, your personal credit's always going to come into the calculation, and a PG is going to be in place until you have, like, you're so rock solid. You've got a rock solid balance sheet. So your assets are, 3 or 4x what the debt is, and you have audited financials. Almost no small business owners get there before very late in their journey as a small business owner. And by that time, they're usually done borrowing money.
Yeah, I went through that. I mean, it probably was in business for 10 years before I got any out of all personal guarantees. But I also teach entrepreneurship here, Levi, at the Walton College, which is part of the University of Arkansas. And I always tell my students that even though you're borrowing this, and even though you've got your LLC or your S corp or whatever, and you think you have a liability protection, and you're not personally liable for this stuff, even if you didn't have to sign for it, they're still going to come after you personally if you don't pay. Small companies that have one owner or two owners. Isn't that your experience?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's how the system works. There's exceptions. There are kind of very subprime products that don't require a personal guarantee, but they come with very, very high costs. Really, if you want to get away from personal guarantees, you got to go kind of flex into the trade credit ecosystem. There's about $1 trillion lent each year to small businesses in the form of loans and credit cards. there's another $4 to $5 trillion lent from business to business. So if you think of Home Depot, they've got a business credit card. It's just as hard to qualify for as an Amex Blue for Business card, but they've also got in-store credit. So you take your business card, you can spend it at Lowe's. Most small business owners aren't qualified for that card. Or you can in-store line of credit, and you can, $60,000 line of credit. You can get your lumber, you can get all the stuff you need to work on a job, but it's captive credit. That's the biggest form of credit, and that credit is a lot easier to get without a personal guarantee because it's inherently less risky than giving someone cash. A contractor isn't going to go in and buy wood unless they have a job. They've got a down payment, so it's inherently less risky to extend credit to a business in the form of services or goods.
Captive. Well, I'm sorry, Levi. You said captive credit. I mean, is that what that means? Like the Home Depot. When you say captive, can you define that?
Yeah, it just means you can only spend that credit at the issuer, and the issuer is a business. And I gave a big example, Home Depot, but even small business owners, like when I had my electric sign company, I would get 50% down, and I had 10 to 15% margin on a job, and a job could be several months between manufacturing, installation, billing. A lot of times to even get the job, I had to give net 60 or net 90 terms on that final payment. And so it's a funny relationship where the second they cut me a check, they're a creditor to me, right? They took a risk on me and gave me half of the money. And then the second that I'm over halfway in costs into the job, now I'm a creditor to them. So it's this weird situation where halfway through it flips, but I'm taking a risk on their ability to pay for the rest of the job. So that was captive credit. I'm giving them, that other 50% is basically credit that I'm extending them. They can't go spend it at a competitor. It's captive to my business and the job, at hand.
This is such a valuable conversation because I believe that, like you mentioned it, Mark, it took a long time for you to start understanding this, but
yeah,
a lot of new entrepreneurs, right? They have an expectation in their mind. Number one, that somebody's out there to really help them and cheer them on, which is not reality. Right. But I mean, more so you distance that. Oh, well, banks will lend money to.
Yeah. On my business plan. That's
my
favorite.
Yes. If I just have a great business plan and forecasting, I mean, the bank's going to, in the SBA is just there to grant out money to me. And I got all this support and you don't. Do not. That's one thing I keep harping on is like when I hear this exaggeration of this flamboyant life as an entrepreneur being preached and all this stuff, young entrepreneur or entrepreneur, don't fool yourself for a second. This is not a smooth, fun ride. This is a bloodbath, high risk stakes game that you're playing, right? And it's going to take all of you, and no one's there to help you. But I do. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say banks can't take any risk.
No,
that's the thing. They can't take any risk at all.
Yeah.
So their underwriting standards are going to be way too high.
Yeah.
Unless you got some big assets to give them as collateral.
Well, I've spent way too much energy in the early days being upset or self-introspecting or thinking something was wrong with my plan or my connections, and I wasted so much time. And Levi, you busted the myth right out of the gate, right? It's not how the system works. But then the captive credit, which I would call like vendors.
You call it vendor credit.
Yeah, vendor credit. Like that was a very important thing.
We love that. You're right. I mean, that's critical.
And it's easier. You don't, and everybody's on the same page. I mean, it's really insightful. Good myth busting.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was no way I could have built that electric sign manufacturing company without trade credit because with the bank, I had a $5,000 business credit card. And that was after a while. That was after a year or two. I'm running 30,000, 200,000, eventually or more through the bank a month. And they could only give me a $5,000 business credit card. Eventually I got like a $20,000 line of credit that they collateralized like $250,000 of assets with a blanket UCC filing. But I had 10 or 12 vendor credit accounts with my steel supplier, plastic supplier, paint supplier, concrete brick supplier, equipment rental place that I got, because you can't own all the equipment you're going to need. So without all those different accounts, I would have been toast. And that was a couple $100,000 in credit I had access to that was, 60%, maybe more of the cost of a job. And so then it's a lot easier to manage cash flow because you did get that 50% down, and so it really made it a lot easier to expand the business.
Now, another good thing about trade credit like that is the interest rates are usually don't exist.
Once you go beyond the terms, maybe they try to.
Yeah.
Then people don't even pay that. They just say no.
And they would rather extend you more credit and get an accounts receivable than, it's good for their books, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're in the business because they have to be competitive. Because if they don't offer credit, someone else will, and that's where you'll do business. And you're right. If you had net 30 and your customer was paying slow, just took a phone call, and there was some provision like 1% or 2% per month, and you just call them and say, "Hey, look, my customer hasn't paid me yet." They say no problem, and in the vast majority of the time, they wouldn't even charge you for that extension for another 30 or 60 days because they don't want to lose you. And they know you're a good customer and you're going to come back and buy more steel or whatever it is you're buying.
I was a general contractor and small, 5 to 10 million a year in one of my businesses. And people always say, well, the cash flow is terrible. I always had positive cash flow. Because like you said, like my building supply company, I could buy $100,000 worth of stuff from them. I would charge my client at the end of the week. And if I may have 60 days to pay that $100,000. I got $100,000 worth of cash. I'm going to mark it up to my clients, and I got 120.
Yeah.
And I'm always ahead cash flow wise. So vendor credit's critical. Let me ask you about one thing. This is really may seem off the subject, but vendor statements. Have you ever used those? What a vendor statement is you send out something to all of your suppliers, and you ask them, you say, look, it looks like for 2026, we're going to buy $400,000 worth of whatever from you. What kind of terms will you give me? What kind of discount will you give for early payment? Whatever. And you send that out to all your suppliers. And the presumption that they have is that you're now making suppliers bid against each other. You may only send it to them.
Yeah.
And they actually have to bid against themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. To give you the best deal. Have you ever heard of that or used that tactic, Levi?
Not as formally as the way you described it. That's certainly something that gets easier the more scale you have, the more buying power you have, and especially based on how meaningful you are to that specific supplier. If it's Home Depot, they're probably going to say, okay, you're going to spend $100,000. Great. You're one up to 1 million customers.
Sure. But they're nothing to them.
But it happens also informally with the vendors pushing you for stuff like that. Like back when I had my sign company, there was only 2 electrical wholesalers, right? So there's a lot of things you got to buy that are very specific to electric signs. And there was Denko Sales and Sun Supply in Boise, Idaho. That was it. They would usually bring that up. Like, hey, how much of, what type of wallet share am I getting? Because sometimes, like even if I had a preferred one, the preferred one's out of inventory, I got to go to the other one. And so they were always angling for how do I get more wallet share out of you? And so I didn't run it as formally as the way you just described. I was young and probably not in the business long enough to figure it out. But I did see that dynamic oftentimes brought by them. What do I need to do to get more of your wallet?
Yeah. So back on Lendio. Now, are you still part of this? Is it still your thing or what's the deal?
I left a long time ago. I was on the board the first couple of years. At Nav, we make financing recommendations. Some of that is through a partnership with Lendio. So we do have a two-way partnership where they push customers to us, we push them to them. And once we launched, I had a non-compete for 2 years. So for the first 2 years, it was just education, no recommendations. And so I left the board once we started making recommendations. But we focused on solving exclusively digitally in-house, which is usually going to be a loan not bigger than $50,000, usually going to be a line of credit, maybe a term loan. And so anything that's more complex, a person's got to get involved. Like as far as long as we are in technology, inventory financing, equipment financing, there's so many types of financing that they're complex. And so a person still has to get involved. And so we send that traffic to Lendio to help our customers get that type of financing.
I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to get more clarity on NAV.
Yeah. That's what I wanted.
NAV will give recommendations about the credit building, like we talked about before, correct? But then it will also be a lender to businesses, potentially. Am I understanding that correctly?
No, we don't take balance sheet risk. But we have the vast majority of the data that a lender is going to use to underwrite risk on your business. Or we do a lot with trade credit recommendations as well. And so we're a super efficient source of traffic. So with American Express, for example, we're the only source of traffic where we're referring people that at pretty close level, they fit the underwriting box based on personal credit, business credit, time in business, industry, all of the different things that are taken into consideration. So because it's not a one-time view of the data, we stay tied directly into the data sources. We're not relying on what the business owner says their cash flows are or what their personal credit score is. We know there's data integrity because they're all direct connections. So that the recommendations in our product for business credit cards, business loans, trade credit, things like that, they're always real time. So this month, maybe you see, hey, I'm pre-qualified for this loan, and a tax lien hits your business credit. Next month, you're not going to see you're qualified for that loan. And so we're not going to recommend it to you. But we'll say, here's what's holding you back. You've got a tax lien from your county, and that's going to prevent you from getting almost any type of favorable financing, including business credit cards. So that's like a small example of the type of just automated advice that we give to the business owner. So they stay buttoned up.
So you do refer them to specific sources of credit based on your live, continuously updated data from them.
That's right. Yep.
What do you charge for this service? I'm just curious.
So there's a free version of our product that's probably the most valuable free software any small business owner could get in any direction. We give you insights around your personal credit. On the business credit, we show you a letter grade instead of the actual score, and then a summary business credit report, and you get the cash flow insights for free. So it's a very robust free product. And then if you want to upgrade, we'll give you the actual business credit scores. We'll give you the full reports. We'll give you the FICO SBSS score, which is what's used, as I mentioned earlier, kind of in the pregame before we got started. It's the score used to get insurance on SBA loans. So lenders use that score. They're in one of the tiers. We'll give you business credit coaching so we can help you understand how to build up your business credit so you rely on your personal credit less and less and take advantage of trade credit and other types of financing that look at business credit more. And so that's kind of the difference between free and paid. If you upgrade, you go from free cash flow insights to bookkeeping, so then you can just manage your full books through Nav. So I hate product tricks. You guys have probably seen those where it's like you get something for free and it's like, then you eventually get to a spot you're stuck. You're like, God damn it. Now I need this. I got to pay for it. I hate those. So our free product's very robust.
So do you guys get kickbacks from the lenders on any of these referrals? I'm just curious.
Yeah. Yep. And that's all disclosed in our product. So
that's how you make your money, basically, then. More than subscription, I would guess. Is it not? Or is it?
That's what people think from the outside looking in, but it's not. We make more on our software revenues than we do on Marketplace. On Marketplace, we, for example, with our embedded relationship with Fundbox, we have a best rate guarantee. So we're giving up economics in that relationship just to make sure our customer can't get a better deal anywhere else. And so we see marketplaces, of financing options. That's a intermittent need that you have. Whereas staying on top of your credit, financial health, that's something that you should always stay on top of. So yeah, we have a relationship. We get paid. We don't make our recommendations based on how much we get paid. We make our recommendations based on what's the cheapest type of capital. And then if you say like, well, actually, I need something tomorrow, that capital is never going to be cheap. But that's a decision you're going to make with your eyes wide open.
Yeah, I've been there before.
Well, I mean, I think that it's even more valuable for Nav, right, to have your revenue coming from your subscribers directly.
Oh, yeah.
That just that good software subscription revenue is extremely valuable.
We love to sell the company. Eric loves that. He's a SaaS company.
Yeah.
He knows what that's all about.
Well, I do love the model, and it's great. I think that, guess quick question, Levi, coming from the sign manufacturing hotel. I wish we had, had plenty of time to talk about that. I think that's intriguing that you got into the hotel business, but obviously with being in the Bay Area, is that kind of how you got introduced to the software side of things with Lendio and Nav? And I mean, was that a catalyst for that?
No, at the time I was actually in Denver when I started Lendio. My co-founder was in Salt Lake, and that's how at some point we flipped a coin once we felt like we were onto something. And I moved to Salt Lake with anybody who was willing to move from Denver to Salt Lake. This is in the late 2000s. There was not nearly the remote type work that there is today. And so that's how I got started in software. I was in Denver, then moved to Salt Lake. And then it was tough back then to raise venture capital out of Salt Lake. It was on the map a little bit from an enterprise SaaS perspective, but not yet fintech. In fact, I think Lendio was the first fintech to ever raise venture capital out of Utah, and Nav was the second, but it was still difficult. So I moved to the Bay Area so I could fill in talent gaps, because Utah is an enterprise SaaS market at the time, didn't have a lot of direct to consumer, and we're very much direct to small business versus like the traditional SaaS go to market motion. And so I moved to the Bay Area just to make it easier on partnerships, raising venture capital, things like that. And it worked. And now I don't think that matters. If you're in Salt Lake and you're fintech, you can raise money as easily as someone from New York or the Bay Area.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? I think it's a good way to start transitioning to the discussion of raising capital. The dynamics have changed so much in the last decade about where you have to be to get access to capital and all the different vehicles that are available now. Man, with all your experience now, Levi, with Nav, Lendio, you've raised $200 million in capital, which I'm assuming that $200 million that you've raised in VC capital has been related with Nav, own entities.
That's correct. Lendio's raised 100, and Nav, we've raised 105 million.
Wow. That's awesome. And a lot of great experience there to what do you see? I guess number one, what's probably the smartest way in general that a small business should go about capitalization, whether it's financing, whether it's trade credit started out, or do you go straight for the VC? What are you seeing as probably the best path at this point?
Most small businesses are not in a category that a VC would invest. We touched on it briefly in the intro. The best place to get capital is from your customers. I always, when you hear most businesses fail because they couldn't get access to financing, I'm like, no, most businesses fail because they didn't have enough revenues to cover their costs and turn a profit. That's the real reason. So you go get a loan as a Band-Aid. Sometimes it's not a Band-Aid. Sometimes it's an opportunity to expand. But I would certainly say, use your personal resources. If you're not willing to tap your retirement accounts, leverage your personal credit, you probably don't have any business being in business. You're not going to make it through tough times if you're not willing to start out with your own money and put your own livelihood at risk. And, there's friends, family, and fools. I'm usually not a fan because they don't know they don't understand. They're just a fan of you. You borrow money, you got to pay it back. You're going to struggle to pay it back. It's going to ruin friendships and relationships. So to me, that's a last ditch effort. Or give them equity. They don't know how to value equity. You're probably going to get a bad deal. So for me, it's bootstrap / use your personal resources, bring in a business partner. If you don't have enough resources, right size the economics. You can have a part-time business partner in your full-time, and just get into the position you can start to leverage credit. And you're only going to do that if you stay on top of your personal credit, start to build business credit, and manage your cash flow as well. If you can raise venture capital, like even at Lendio and Nav, we bootstrapped it first with my money and my co-founder's money at Lendio to get in business, get some revenues so we could get a higher valuation and get less dilution over time. And even at Nav, because of my small business roots, I hated burning money. I hated every bit of it. We burned $87 million before we turned a profit, and I hated every minute of burning that money.
Yeah, I always think bootstrap companies are better managed because they have no resources. They've got to pay closer attention to the cash flow. You see these people start out with huge pots of money, and they don't develop the discipline that they need be successful later. It was good what you were talking about with friends and family. One of the things that I've seen is a lot of confusion. A lot of people don't understand the difference in debt and equity. And then are these small business owners. And then when they get their family members involved, maybe the family member thinks they're buying a piece of the business, and the business owner thinks they're borrowing money from them. And so they get crosswise. There's so many ways it goes wrong, as you said. It's a very slippery slope, undoubtedly.
It's rarely papered right? Like the documentation's poor, and it's just usually a mess.
If you have the ability to document it correctly, usually that would mean that you're savvy enough to be going to more professional institutions than friends and family to get capital, right? If you know how to.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, makes sense.
It's and I appreciate that too, because I've rarely ever seen any kind of friends and family deal that works out really, really great. Everyone's super optimistic, and it causes so much pain, and everybody changes when money gets involved. I don't care who they are, what
Boy,
they've
it's
been
true.
through, and how close they are to you. You know, if you owe me 20 grand and you doesn't seem like you're working that hard on your business and you're not sweating more than me. I mean, I'm starting getting kind of twisted.
I lent a guy $3,000 once. Who was the guy I dealt with at the Firestone store. He's the manager.
Yeah.
And he gave me a hard luck story. And I gave him the $3,000. I said to my wife, I'm like, you know what? We may never get this back. I papered it up. It was an interest-free loan for like 2 or 3 years. I was just trying to help the guy out, you know? Yeah. And anyway, so of course the time came, he didn't pay me. Then I'm start hearing about like he bought a new house. Then he got like a giant TV, you know? And I'm like, dude, you got to pay me back.
Now you're getting twisted.
Now I'm getting pissed off. I want my $3,000. But it's so true. I'll never forget. I never borrowed any money from my mom and dad. Okay. I always tell this story. When I moved to Boston, it was my 4th house and I was moving from Texas. There was a real estate recession there. I think I cleared $1,100 in equity on my 3rd house that I owned when I moved out of DFW to Boston. So I bought the second cheapest house in Natick, Massachusetts. It was lime green, asbestos shingled, chain link around the whole yard, and the yard was asphalt. It was like an industrial compound. Anyway, so I had to gut the house to move in and do a bunch of work to it. I borrowed $5,000 from my mom. I papered it up. I said, I'll pay you 1% interest on it. Paid her $500 a month or whatever it was, consistently every time. But so let's say I'm like halfway through this and I'm talking to my 12 months, only time I borrowed any money from them. And I'm talking to my mom. She's like, what are you doing? You know, we're telling her, what are you doing for dinner tonight? Well, we're getting pizza. He's like, you're getting pizza? You can afford that? I'm like, my mom would have like made the dough, you know, probably smashed up the tomatoes for the sauce. To her, it was like a tremendous way. I'm like, I am now being judged for takeout. I will never put myself in that freaking position again.
It can't even order.
Okay. But I mean, you know, that's what happens, isn't it? It's stuff like that. Friends and family are very dangerous, but it is a big source. Let me ask you about another source of borrowing that I think a lot of people with small businesses are unaware of, and that is borrowing from your credit card processor. What do you know about that? What do you tell people about that? In other words, let's say I've got a business and I take in $100,000 a month from cards from people buying stuff from me. I can borrow money on that from my credit card processor, and then it's paid off as the money comes in next month. And I get a new loan from it, and then I do that again. I've done that several times. Sonia discovered that years ago when you and I came back to Swag White.
Yeah.
That we could borrow based on American Express, on our American Express payments every month. We could borrow on that. What's your experience with that?
Brief history on that. The first company in the U.S., I believe, to start doing that was called Advance America. Then they were Capital Access Network, and now they're just called Can Capital. And back when that type of financing was invented, it wasn't the processors themselves that invented that type of financing. It was people who got set up as a processor because they realized to mitigate risk, I'll give you a loan against those receivables, but you got to process your credit card payments through me. So then I control the flow of payments. And that space got big. It got big fast. PayPal was the first. They did a study internally to say, like, why are we losing our best merchants? And they found it was because of these types of loans. And so PayPal rolled out the working capital loan with way better terms than what the other folks were offering. But you had to process through it. You had to already be a PayPal customer. Then, of course, Square replicated that model. Intuit's replicated that model. So that's kind of how it evolved. So depending on, and a lot of independent lenders now, they still advance based on your credit card revenues, but they don't control the flow of payments back. So they're just taking it out of your checking account versus making you switch to process through them. It's usually an expensive type of financing unless you're super buttoned up and you have leverage to say, like, look, I got tons of cash flows and my credit's great and this is just easy and convenient. That's why I'm going to use this, but I'm not going to pay ridiculous costs. And that used to be daily repayments. So a portion of daily revenues kind of evolved to, there's still daily ones, there's weekly, but most of them realize like it's so miserable for a small business owner to figure out that product that now they're just usually monthly repayment. It's a great type of financing, and it's inherently lower risk as you're purchasing. It's usually structured as they're purchasing future receivables, so they can skirt all the regulations on small business lending. But yeah, it's a great form of capital, but that's kind of how it's evolved. But if you're processing through Square or PayPal or one of the big players, get their loan. It's going to be a heck of a lot cheaper than going to an independent lender that lends based on that data source.
I just think a lot of people are unaware that that's available as a source of credit. I certainly was until my wife pointed it out.
It's also evolved a little bit more than that. Like all of the independent lenders now, they look at all the cash flows, because when that loan product was invented, there was no such thing as open banking. So there wasn't an easy way to look at your cash receipts or the checks you're putting in your checking account as well. And so almost every single lender in that space now, they're going to look at holistically at your cash flows. The payments are a piece of that, and you'll get access to more money than someone like PayPal that's looking exclusively at how much are you processing through this platform.
Makes sense.
Levi, earlier you gave our listeners the best case scenario, which is basically driving for capitalization, which is your client market base, right? What would be the second? Like what would you say to somebody that is starting to get that, but they are trying to make investments and grow their business? They see opportunities, or they're wanting to scale up a little bit more. I mean, what would you say is the next probably best way to go for them?
So the answer varies highly based on how buttoned up they are on their credit financial health, because business credit cards are a great way to grow your business. If you get 3 business credit cards that have a 12-month 0% interest, and all that interest is going to get tacked on if you don't pay them off of those 12 months. But even a product that simple is a great product and probably underutilized, because I think most small business owners just think of a business credit card versus thinking, oh, I could get 3 or 4 and then have access to a lot more credit. That's usually a good answer for someone that's got less than 2 years in business, that has really good personal credit and not in a restricted industry. So that's one that's underutilized, is getting more than 1 business credit card. Of course, if your credit's buttoned up, there's bank financing. You're a lot more likely to get some type of a bank loan, before you have too many years in business and like multiple years of profitability. You got a better chance with a local bank or a credit union, where they're very focused on understanding the local community. They've already heard about you. They're going to the Chamber of Commerce. They see you there. They see you sponsor a kids sports team. So it sounds old school, but in small banks and in credit unions, the relationship still matters. Wells Fargo, Bank of America, those bankers come and go that are sitting in the booth, and the relationship just doesn't matter. Yeah, very and they have to at the scale they operate.
So line of credit for AR or something would be probably easiest to get from a bank, wouldn't you think? What the industry is.
Yeah, and you'll get a better deal from a bank, but there's factoring's a very old type of loan product that now there's modern versions of it. That's still a good type of financing. I mean, in my mind, I've always been agnostic to is the cost of financing good or bad? Like ethically, the sales practices of the lender can be good or bad. That's an ethical question. The collections practices, that's an ethical question. But the cost of financing is, does it pencil out for the project you're working on? And if you've got, like in my electric sign company, a lot of times you had repeat customers. And so if I had the chance to win a job, and the only way I could win the job is if I took some unfavorable financing and I was only going to break even on the job, I would still do it, or maybe even lose a little money on the job just to win that customer for future jobs. So that's we talk about the best type of financing. The best type of financing is, are you qualified for it? And does it pencil out based on the project of what you're using the money for? That's the pencil out is more important than the cost of financing, because you could borrow money for a project that, it's smoking rates. And if the project doesn't pencil out, you're still screwed. So it's really that for me, I always say the best type of financing is the type you can get that also pencils out with the project that you're working on.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. And I also like the idea, I don't know, I've been notorious. I get laughed at by my wife and people I'll go out and have lunch with, because when it's time to pay the bill, I'll pull out my wallet and say, it's usually about a 3-inch thick wallet stacked full of credit cards. And I've been doing.
I only have one.
No. I got 20. I got at least 20.
MX for everything.
I got a lot, and they're all for different entities, different, and multiple credit cards personally. But I mean, that's what I had since the early days
You relied on those credit
I
cards.
relied heavily because I'd be out to, like to your point, I'd be out for lunch and I'd be investing in a client lunch. You can't afford it, right? But I use that credit in the sales process, buy that lunch. But a lot of times that credit card will be maxed out. And so I'd have to have a backup with me so I didn't embarrass myself to death in that meeting. And, no problem. Yeah, I just, I forgot that one's been canceled. But kind of to your point, though, I always took the theory of having multiple options at all times of how I'm accessing capital. And, Levi, you brought up, like, what's that project? What's it for? And I'd use either a trade credit for, I'd use partially for trade credit for this. I use a credit card for that. And then I'd even go as far as using like overdraft protection from the bank for the weekend. And that 0%, baby.
As we've said many times, the goal is survive long enough until something good happens. Right?
100%.
It's so true.
Just keep driving, and then and kind of evening out all these risk scenarios to where one particular lender could basically cause catastrophe across my business if they were like,
it's true.
But I wouldn't allow that to happen.
I'm on the board of a company that Bank of America called their line of credit. They got what do they call that? The letter of, there's a term for it. It's not non-compliance. Anyway, they had violated a covenant on their line of credit. And Bank of America just calls their line of credit and just says, basically, go find a new bank. Like you said, that's their entire credit facility. Is that it's Bank of America, End of story.
Stuff like that can happen through no fault of your own. It could be a regulator that looks at the entire book of business and says, we don't like how this is balanced. And so they got to call it, and they have the right to call it at any time, covenants be damned. And so sometimes that happens, out of your control. It happened to me once during the financial crisis with American Express. I had $150,000 limit on my business credit card. It got chopped to $1,500 overnight. And my business was fine during the financial crisis.
Sure. Wow. Yes, they were just doing that in general as a policy practice to tighten it up. Let me ask you a very specific question about credit. I got 4 new vehicles for a business. I'm going to lease them from, let's say, Ford. Do you think we're going to have to sign for those personally, those leases?
It really depends on your revenue and profitability. If you're doing 4 at once, probably a lot. Well, I guess, what are the high level financials of the business?
14-year-old company lost a whole bunch of money last year, but has a bunch of cash in the bank. Solid balance sheet.
It's going to be an argument. And so that's one thing that's a good tip for small business owners is a lot of times they don't know they can negotiate. And so on an equipment lease, your business credit is going to be important. It'll be Dun & Bradstreet, but also Equifax, which is a lesser known fax. They acquired the bureau PayNet, and kind of the fourth credit bureau that was the leasing and equipment financing bureau. And so if those reports are robust enough and your personal credit, the price is still going to check your personal credit, check the finances. If those are robust enough, the lender is almost always going to ask for a personal guarantee. Equipment leases is one category of financing that you can get out of personal guarantees. Not all the time, but if your business credit's strong enough, but you almost always have to negotiate it because they're not going to offer it up. If you can get a personal guarantee on every type of financing, why not? That's just another layer of protection. And of course, the other thing you got to look out for in that scenario is on an equipment lease, they should just put a lien on the piece of equipment, but sometimes it'll be tricky and they'll put a blanket lien on the entire business.
Ready to level up your show? At podcastvideos.com, we offer industry-leading recording and expert marketing to help your show reach more listeners. From creation to distribution, we've got you covered. Visit podcastvideos.com and elevate your podcast today.
That's interesting. Yeah, well, it wouldn't fly because the SBA's got that already, and they're not going to want that. They wouldn't allow anybody else, unless they're subordinated, I guess, to the SBA.
But why not try to get that? Why not be second in position? And yeah, you're exactly right. But that's another tricky thing. A lot of people, and I learned the hard way as a small business owner, exactly how UCC filings work. And it's the same in every state. So once you figure out how it works, then you're in good shape. But that is something to look out for. Like my $20,000 line of credit collateralized with $250,000 in assets. I was just naive. I didn't understand how that worked until I went to get a piece an equipment lease, and they're like, we can't give this to you unless they'll do a carve out, and this piece of equipment has a UCC just on it, which they did, but that was an argument with the bank as well, because why do they want to give up ground on the protections they already have?
Yep, makes total sense.
Levi, do you feel like that a lot of founders or entrepreneurs, business owners have an incorrect view about what financing is? Like, I mean, like coming out of the gate, especially new ones, right? I mean, like we are trained from day one as young adult or young kids going through school, never ever take debt. Debt's bad.
Oh yeah.
Debt's,
well, our parents are old too.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's
they came out
telling
of
you
the depression era, hangover or depression itself.
100%. And
Yeah.
so you go in, and then now you're going to start a business, right? That's kind of a bad start from a perspective. What's your perspective about debt financing?
Well, I was raised the same way. I was raised on a farm in rural Idaho, and my dad had to get a farm loan each year. And in a bad year, he'd have to carve out 5 acres of his farm and sell it with a building permit on it just to pay off the debt. So I was raised, debt's bad, debt's bad. And when I started my first company, I was a ghost to the credit bureaus. And so I was drinking from a fire hose, learning about personal credit, business credit, everything else, because his thing was just pay cash for everything. And I was proud of that in the early days until my electric sign suppliers like, hey, look, man, we're not really set up to take checks in person. Can we just give you credit? That's how I initially learned about trade credit. And but I think the problem is lots of consumers don't understand consumer financing, and consumer financing is very simple compared to business financing. There's a handful of ways we use our personal credit. There's 3 credit bureaus. The data is substantially similar bureau to bureau. So your score is going to be pretty close bureau to bureau. That's the kind of the big thing. You're going to get a credit card or, auto loan. They're going to look at your income and things like that. But sometimes they don't even verify it. So you go from that simple world. There's just a few ways to use your credit, and lenders underwrite substantially similar in auto and these different categories. Then you get into small business. There's dozens of types of loan products. They're all different. And to further complicate it, each lender may do it their own way, even though it's the same type of loan. And they may look at different data. Like one's pulling Dun & Bradstreet, one's pulling Experian business credit. And so it's just, so I would say, yeah, that they're very undereducated on business financing. That's usually because they didn't even figure out how consumer financing worked. So if you don't understand consumer financing, which is way easier, you got a really steep climb to understand all the different business financing options that are out there. Like even you asked me the question, get a loan from your merchant processor. They may not even know the phrase merchant processor. They just know I got this machine, I swipe cards, or I got my PayPal account or whatever. So yeah, it's a steep learning curve.
That's a good point.
And entrepreneurs should see financing as a positive thing, right? I mean, like, kind of like our discussion, having like, I don't know about you guys, but as an entrepreneur, I hate feeling vulnerable to like we're constantly vulnerable anyway, but the goal is how do you minimize your risk?
You get the credit before you need it. That's 100%. How you do it. Everybody knows
100%.
that. Yeah.
Another example,
you're not going to get it.
My wife's in a completely different realm than me. Like when we sold the company and stuff and we got out of the debt, but then I was like, I got more credit cards immediately.
Yeah. You never know.
Yeah,
right? I'm paranoid, right?
That's right. And actually, I can get more credit right now.
Yeah.
It's like a gold mine. But I mean, get it. But she's like, chop them up, get rid of them. I'm like, no way, man. I'm keeping my stack. But I mean, I think that
my stack
as the business owner, if you are starting a business, you do need to go out and like I love your company, Levi. Like,
I do too.
I'm going to
what a tremendous resource this is.
Yeah, I'm going to totally sign up for myself and check myself out because I have no idea how people.
Yeah,
it just gives you insight to know like how you can negotiate. And to your point, they're all operating in different ways, and so I could actually go to a lender and say, hey, here's the positive things about my business. This is what I'm looking for from a loan standpoint, and this is why it gives you that negotiation power. I would imagine, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. The more you know about your own situation, the harder it is for someone to take advantage of you. And I mean, to be clear, it was absolute misery to build this business. No one else had done it. So unlike the consumer space where there was already Credit Karma, no one had convinced the commercial bureaus, hey, we want to build an education-based company and use your data to educate the small business owner. And the FCRA doesn't apply to business credit. So the FCRA kind of forced the consumer bureaus to become more consumer friendly, more transparent. That was all legislative pressure. It doesn't exist in the small business world. Even the FICO SBSS, for example, I'd gotten 2 SBA loans when I was a small business owner, but I'd been turned down for them before as well. And so it's this score nobody knows exists. It's the FICO's version of a business score. It takes in the personal credit, the business credit, and the cash flow. So it's a holistic score on the business. I pitched Will Lansing in person, the CEO of FICO, and I thought, I'm never going to get to meet this guy again. This is my chance. I tried like hell to close him, one time close, to convince him, let us make this transparent to small business owners. You still can't go to FICO and get transparency to the score. They point people at us. And I didn't close him, but I did later find out that it impressed him how hard he tried, which I'm lucky. That could have gone either way. But now there's transparency into your FICO SBSS and what you need to do to get above the minimum requirements to get an SBA loan. We were trailblazing all along the way from a technology perspective with the bureaus, and it took a long time to bring some of them along. And even for us to be able to structure our data costs in a way that we could actually be profitable. In my B round that Experian led, I had a negative gross margin. Like a small business owner, you can only have a negative gross margin if you're raising venture capital. And so those investors were taking a big leap of faith that I would be able to, continue to develop my relationship with the bureaus to get to a point I could have a sustainable model. It helped that Experian led that round. And of course, Experian then had an interest in making sure, at least as it relates to their data, that we could be in that position. But this was a brutal company to build, which is true of every company. My manufacturing company was brutal to build, but it's satisfying. I mean, our customer testimonials now are countless.
You're a very solid guy, obviously, and no BS coming from you. And I'm sure that you got that across to these people, and that always helps if you can communicate effectively. And
100%. I mean,
to
that point. To that point, right? If you're going to start a business, the business idea has to be solid. Your planning, your perspective, your sales, you got to have a lot of things. But a lot of it comes down to who you are as a person.
Oh, it does.
Because people do lend a lot on trust, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I do appreciate your comment earlier about the small hometown banks.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
Relationships.
Always go to them.
100%.
First, always.
Yeah, you should be building banking relationships instantaneous.
I want to know the founder or the chairman of the bank personally.
Yeah.
That's how I'm going to do it.
Absolutely. And I want to know everybody in between
friends
too.
Yeah.
I want to be able to get to people. I mean,
yeah.
But there's so much about that, about you as an individual. Do you just live up to your word? Really, at the end of the day, Levi, correct me if I'm wrong. This is the way I see banks. Like, they just want to get paid back their money.
They can't afford to take the risk.
That's how they run their entire business.
Very small margin.
People that don't pay back are risky for them.
They don't like them.
They're trying to decide, should I allow that to happen? And if you have that character and that track record, you're on your way.
It's definitely one of the 4 C's of credit, as they say, character.
Yeah.
But Levi, so if anybody wants to get more into Nav, we're really out of time. What is the best way to find you and Nav?
Search for us in the App Store or just go to nav.com, NAV. It's implicit as navigation. We're going to help you navigate the life of being a small business owner. So 1 syllable, 3-digit .com. That's all you got to remember, nav.com.
Bro, real quick question. When did you get that domain?
It was a couple of years in, and we were Creditera. We were bootstrapped. I spent $1,000 on the domain. I'm like, oh, it's the Era Credit. Let's put no thought into it. And we hated the name. No one could spell it. No one could remember it. Creditiara, like all these versions. And then Cortera, which at the time was an independent business credit bureau, later acquired by Moody's, put me on notice that they were going to sue the patent office to invalidate our trademark. Talked to an attorney. He's like, you're going to lose. The patent office is going to lose. So I called Jim Swift, the CEO of the bureau, and I said, dude, I hate this name. Can you just give me 6 months so I don't make the same stupid mistake? And so then we went on a search to find a domain, and I lucked out because the person that owned nav.com was the widow of a guy who started Navigator Communications. It was a small business. He died. She had to wind the business down. And she said to me within 30 seconds of being on the phone, if you're a domain broker, we can end the conversation. I'm looking to sell this to someone who will honor my husband's small business legacy. And so it was intersection of luck and hustle, because we'd hustled like hundreds of domain names that we'd liked before that. So we got it for a long time. Thank you.
Nav, you got nav.com. That's epic, man. That's like, I've
Really
been
is.
in this business for many years. Like that's like a gold mine. Well done.
Yeah. Well done.
Well done. Good hustle.
Well,
Yeah.
it's been great talking with you, Levi. Maybe
Yeah.
we can do it again sometime, because I think there's a lot of different things we could talk about. That would be very helpful. I mean, maybe we could get some questions from listeners and build
Yeah.
up a little list and then get back with Levi
That'd
and
be cool.
simply ask those questions of Levi.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. And until then, I'm going to be a subscriber here real soon. I'm going to go check it out, man. I mean, I think it's valuable. Very valuable.
So, all right, Levi. Well, thanks a lot. And we better wrap it up now, Eric.
Okay. Sounds good. It's been
Until-
another great episode of
Big Talk about small businesses.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Big Talk about Small Business. If you have any questions or ideas for upcoming shows, be sure to head over to our website, www.bigtalkaboutsmallbusiness.com, and click on the Ask the Host button for the chance to have your questions answered on the show. Stay connected with us on LinkedIn at Big Talk About Small Business. And be sure to head over to our website to read articles, browse episodes, and ask questions about upcoming shows.